ladies, this is Breanna from MissRutters.com, and for this tutorial, I'm going to show you exactly how to slay this look all the way from beginning to end. I'm going to show you how to color. I will show you how to install this look and style this lace closure sew-in. I used 2 luxury bundles and 1 body wave lace closure in the lengths of 16 inches. These are the coloring materials that you will need to actually color your hair jet black. You will need Box Revlon color in the color number 10. You will need Color Safe shampoo and conditioner. You will also need a mixing bowl for your color. You will need a mascara wand to color your closure, 2 coloring brushes, 1 small and big. And you will need latex gloves to protect your hands. You will also need scissors as well. To color your hair extensions, make sure you fully unravel your hair until it's one long row and then fold that row in half, so that way you can effectively color your hair. Now make sure you add your developer first from your box color. And when you're actually coloring your hair, you may need about a box to a box and a half of color, but typically you only need 1 box per bundle of hair and 1 box per closure. So now you're going to mix that developer and the color together. As you can see, our color is continuing to turn very, very dark. And once you're finished, you're gonna start coloring the very tail ends of your hair, meaning you're gonna start at the bottom and then you're gonna work your way up, saving about a couple of inches of space of hair away from the weft. So color most of the hair with your permanent black box color. As you can see, the hair is pretty dark already, but I wanted the hair to be a very rich, literally jet black color. I didn't want the natural color of the hair because the hair comes in a natural brown color. But if you do, you could skip this step. But for this particular look, this is what we're doing to make the hair extremely dark and vivid. Now you're gonna start working the color up. And when you're actually coloring the very top of your extensions, you don't have to saturate the weft. You just want to make sure you get close to the weft. Now flipping the hair over, we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Make sure that you go over all the ends, and then you're going to start working your way up near the weft. And make sure you get your brush really close up in there. Even move the wefts apart so that way you don't have any brown root area right near where your weft is. Now it's time to actually color our lace closure, and this step is extremely important because I want you to pay attention to how to do this process without accidentally ruining your lace. So when you're working with your lace, always handle the lace by the hair itself. So if you have to move it or anything, use the hair to actually position it or hold it. When you're also coloring, always part very thin sections, so that way you can effectively color both sides without getting any color on the lace. So first, go ahead and take your brush and apply the color on most of the hair. Now it's time to really get in at those roots so we don't have a brown overcast near the lace. As you can see here, I'm literally about a couple of centimeters away from the lace, and I'm rotating the brush into the hairs by literally rolling the color onto the roots, and then I'm bringing it out. This is very, very important in preventing you from pushing color through the lace. You want to go a little bit away, literally like a centimeter or 2, and then you want to bring the color down. So once again, I'm going to show you, you keep doing the same exact process. The same comb that you're using to part your hair, you want to make sure that it does not touch the color because it will get on the lace. So now after you part your very thin section, clip the hair with clips and then do the same thing. Make sure that you apply most of the color first with your large brush along the length of the hair. Now once again, use your mascara wand to do this process. I absolutely love this technique because when you use the mascara wand, it's literally as similar as it is for you to actually put mascara on your eyelashes. You can easily put mascara on your eyelashes without getting it in your eyes, so that same concept applies when you're actually using it to put color at the roots of your closure. Maybe I'm painting blue. What I want to do. even though I was extremely careful, I happened to get a little bit of color on the lace, but don't worry, it'll come right out as long as you don't touch it. You don't want to push the color into the lace. And now this is how our bundles look after we have washed the hair and conditioned it and allowed it to air dry. And this is how the closure looks as well. As you can see, that spot is almost undetectable. You will not notice it when you're wearing your insole. Now, this is how your braid pattern should look when you're wearing your lace closure sew-in. Because we are wearing a middle part, all of our braids are flowing away from the center of our head. And here on the right side, you want your first 3 braids to connect to form one. At the very back, you want to braid 3 braids together, and you're gonna form 4 tails in the back. Now on the left side, those first 3 braids are connected into one as well. When stitching down your braids, I'm going to show you the placement. You're going to grab a braid, wrap it underneath the other braids, and then you're going to tuck it very firmly against 2 neighboring braids. After sewing it down, this is exactly the direction in which you want to begin sewing down your braid. So that's the second one, and I made sure to go in the opposite direction because this distributes the bulk of the braid, so that if they're all flowing in one direction, then you'll notice too much bulk on one side. So I'm just following with my fingers to show you that's how the braids look once they're placed into position. So with our last 2 braids on the side, this is the way you want to begin stitching them down. This is the direction you want your braids to lay. So that first braid there, I stitched it down and I folded the tail in so it doesn't have much braid sticking out. Now on my very last braid, I'm going to show you exactly how to stitch it down. Make sure that your needle is going directly underneath your braid and through the braid that's on your scalp. So it's going around 2 braids. Once you do that, go ahead and create your knot. Now doing this once again, as you can see, you're wrapping the thread around the needle twice and then you're pulling through to create a knot. Now grab the tail end of your braid and fold it so that way you don't have to sew all the way across to the very tippy end of the braids. If you fold it, you only have to sew to about that much. So doing the same thing, go underneath the braids and make sure you're going underneath a braid that's actually braided to your scalp. So as you can see, we're actually running out of thread, and that's why it is extremely important to prepare a lot of needles and threads so that way you can continue working without having to constantly stop for one needle. When you're doing your sew-in, I highly suggest that you use about 10 to 15 needles that are already prepared with thread so you can just keep working very consistently. Now with those last 2 knots at the very end, you're going to cut off the remaining thread, and this is how your braid pattern should look. Now it's time to sew down a weaving net. What you want to do is put the net over your head and make sure that the short sides are near your ears. Now this is the direction that you're going to be applying your stitches around your part. So as you can see here, this is exactly how it should look, and go ahead and sew along the front of your head as well as the sides around your ears. Now I wanted to make sure to show you how to sew down your net at the back, because as you're sewing your net at the back, you're still doing the same stitching technique, but you always want to stretch the net first and then stitch it down. The reason why is because it prevents you from having gaping space at the back of your head, because if you don't stretch and sew, stretch and sew, stretch and sew, you will cause it to look like a bubble of net is lifted from your head. So it has to be flat and contoured to the shape of your head. And when you're creating your knots, always make sure they're very close together. So this is how it should look at this point, and the excess net will be removed. So with your scissors in hand, make sure to carefully cut the rest of the net away from your braid pattern base. But don't cut too close, because this will cause your net to unravel. A net is extremely important in preserving the health of your hair. The reason why is because it provides a very sturdy foundation for your weave, and also it prevents the tension of the weave and the knot from causing strain on your real hair. We got one tiny section in the front where our part is, where you need to remove the excess net. If you forget to do this, you're actually going to see net through your lace. So make sure to remove this before you begin sewing down your extensions.
Maybe I'm painting blue. What I'm about to do is show your love.
Now that we're done, this is how beautiful the braid pattern looks with our weaving net sewn down. Now we're gonna begin sewing down our hair extensions, and I just want to show you how amazing this hair looks. So now make sure that you secure 2 knots at the very beginning of your weft. When you do this, always go through the weft of your hair extension so that the knot is very secure. And you're going to do this twice, so that way it's already connected to the weft before you begin stitching it to your head. Now literally we're gonna start at the very edge of our braid. You're gonna go underneath that braid that's closest to your hairline, and when you pull through, it pulls the extensions exactly where you want them to be. Go back through your braid and then create the same knotting technique we've been doing throughout the entire process. Now when you're pulling to create this knot, make sure to keep adjusting the edge of the weft so that the knot is actually placed on the weft and not the roots of the hair of the weft. So what I mean by that is when you're creating your knots, make sure the knot isn't forming on the hair itself, but around your braid and around the weft. Now as you're continuing to work, you're gonna go about a distance of about 1/4 of an inch or so. You want your knots to be kind of close together so that that first bundle of extensions doesn't unravel.
Sit here thinking of you. Maybe I'm painting blue. What I'm about to do is show your love.
Now I'm almost done sewing down my first bundle, but I'm going to show you the fold over method. To do the fold over method, fold your hair to go back into the opposite direction. And when you begin stitching down this fold, only sew down that top layer of weft. So we're not going underneath both wefts, we're going underneath the new weft that we just folded back. So that way your actual folded portion will be extremely flat, because if you sew around both wefts, it will start to look a little lumpy. Once you create your 2 knots right at the beginning of the fold, you're then going to continue stitching along the way. The fold over method is so important in giving you longevity with your hair extensions, because this prevents you from having to cut through your wefts. So that way when you actually take down your hair, you don't have a bunch of tiny pieces left over. Now, this is how the first bundle looks all sewn down, and I am in love with jet black hair. Don't you agree? Jet black hair is so gorgeous.
Maybe I'm painting blue. What I'm about to do.
So now that I'm almost done sewing down my second bundle, you want to stop where you are so that you can sew down your lace closure. When removing your lace, make sure that you follow very closely against the curvature of the hairline. Do not cut a straight line on your lace, because this will look very unnatural against your hairline. Follow the natural hairline of the lace for your most perfect fit and look. This is how the back looks, and then this is how the front looks. Now secure 1 knot on your lace closure a little bit away from the edge of your lace. We're gonna leave that flap there without anything sewn to it. Now slide it into position, going a little bit past your hairline, and you want to hold it into position very taut and begin sewing down the closure to your braids. So go through your very first braid and then through the same spot as you see here on the lace. Wrap the thread around the needle twice and then pull through to create your very first knot. Make sure to create a second knot in that same space, and then you're going to continue stitching up the rest of the way about 1/4 of an inch. Make sure your knots are very close together so that way your lace does not unravel. This is one of the most important steps that you want to do when sewing your lace down, because it prevents your lace from being lifted. I mean, who wants a lifted lace? Nobody. We want our lace to be extremely flat, and this is one of the secrets to doing so.
Maybe I'm painting blue. What I'm about to do is show your love.
So now I've sewn up about 1/4 inch as I'm demonstrating here, and I have that little tiny piece of lace in the front that you want to keep just like that, because we're going to come back to that later. You're going to do the same thing to the other side, making sure you extend the closure a little bit past your hairline. Now sewing in that exact space right there, that's where you want to secure the needle and thread onto your braid. So you're going to form a simple knot right in that spot. Now with your needle, go in the top, so go through the very top of the lace and pull it into position. So now that we have it into position, go through that spot again and then go through your braid. When you go through your braid, you're going to go through the opening of your thread, and you're going to do the same looping and knotting technique to create your knots. Always do the same technique throughout the entire process when sewing down your extensions as well as your lace. Pull your lace to make sure it is very firm and flat when you're creating your knots. So just continue stitching because you want to go up of a distance about 1/4 inch. Now, I want you to keep doing the same thing on both sides, going up 1/4 inch on the left and then 1/4 inch on the right, and then back and forth until you get to the very back. This allows you to actually make sure that you're sewing your closure very straight in the middle. If you sew all of the knots on one side and then go to the other side, your closure will get shifted in the process. This prevents that. That's how it should look so far, with the tiny piece of lace in the beginning not sewn down. After I finish stitching around my lace, this is how it should look, and that's how much space is left for my extensions. So now it's time to sew down the front, because remember, I wanted you to save this for last. We're going to start sewing down the left side, and what I want you to do is make sure that you pull the beginning of the lace very, very taut. So you want to make sure you're firmly pulling on it so it's extremely flat. Make sure to secure your knots right here at this spot, so that way when you put the actual needle through the lace, it's going to land exactly where you want it. So go through the top, right through the edge of the lace, and then you're going to take that needle and go underneath your braid through the roots of your hair. When you're coming out at the back of the braid, you pull the needle through, wrap the string around the needle twice or around your fingers twice, and then you pull it through the opening. Make sure you're pulling on your closure so that it's extremely firmly placed right where you want it to be, so that way your lace is literally flat and undetectable. For security, go ahead and go through once again, and you can even go through a third time as well, because you don't want the front of the lace to be lifted. Most times I usually do 3 knots at the very, very front of my lace. The one thing that I really love about this closure is that it has reinforcement on the sides, so it has a second layer of lace just on the very sides, so that when you're sewing your closure, it doesn't break down over time. It allows you to get so many uses out of this lace closure without having any holes or any tears or rips in it. So look at that, it's super flat on that side, and now we just got to do the right side to finish it up. Once again, grab the edge and pull it very, very firmly against your braid, so that way you can sew it down without having any lift.
Sit here thinking of you. Maybe I'm painting blue. What I'm about to do is show your love.
After placing that knot in position, go underneath your braid in the exact same spot, and then go through the edge of the lace, wrap the thread around the needle twice, and pull through to create a knot.
Sit here thinking of you. Maybe I'm painting blue. What I'm about to do.
Now put your needle underneath your braid and go through the edge of your lace. Once you do that, grab your thread and go around the needle twice to create your knot. Now you just cut off the remaining thread. Now check this out, I'm doing a pull test just to show you this lace closure is going nowhere. This thing is so flat, it's unreal. Now it's time to actually mold down our lace closure. And in order for it to contour very perfectly against your head, we're going to do this with water. So what you want to do is part medium sections of hair, and you want to spray both sides. You just want to spray the roots because that's the only area we actually have to mold down. Once you finish spraying your roots with water, you're then going to use a liquid heat protectant as well. So this is a water-based heat protectant. The reason why I suggest adding this product is because we're going to be putting direct heat on our hair, and we want to preserve the natural wave pattern of the extensions. Now, using your comb, part the thinnest section of hair at the back of your lace closure and comb it over your head. Use a clip to hold that hair in place. Now, part directly in the middle, making sure you're parting directly over top of your part on your head. And this is how it would look at this point. So just continue to comb your hair down and then go back in a little further at the beginning to part it exactly perfectly, so that way the lace looks extremely natural. Now clip one side down because we're going to start on the right side. Use a boar bristle brush and a blow dryer. Make sure your blow dryer is blowing on medium speed. If it blows too high, you're going to dry out your hair, and if it's too low, it's going to take too long for it to dry. So make sure you're chasing the blow dryer with the brush as you're doing this. This is an absolutely amazing technique, so that way the hair contours very perfectly against your head shape. So now we got 2 more sections. Starting on the left side, you do the same thing, and you can also go in with your comb to really help you to dry your hair. So if it's still a little damp, you can do this as well. You can use a brush or you can use a comb while you're blow drying. Now, because we already smoothed out the back and used our clip to hold in place, the hair is already extremely flat. So just use your hands in your blow dryer to further mold the back of your closure. And look at this is so amazing. We didn't use any holding product. We only used liquid heat protectant and water to mold our closure perfectly against our head. Now it's time to straighten out this hair. So one side is done and we got the right side left to do. Make sure that you're setting your flat iron to 350 degrees and also apply heat protectant down the length of your hair as well. This is to protect the wave pattern so that when you want to wear it wavy again, it's still preserved. That's the purpose of heat protectant, is to protect the integrity of your hair. To straighten the last section at the top where your closure is, make sure that you're tapping the flat iron at the root as you kind of slightly round the top, and then begin to continue to straighten it the rest of the way. Use a little bit of your favorite pressed powder to add to your lace. Because this lace is extremely thin and delicate for an extremely natural look, you don't want to use any liquid makeup or anything like that, not even cream, concealer, or anything that's a liquid, because that will begin to stain the lace. So as you can see, I'm lightly tapping the roots of the hair, and as you can see, I am literally perfecting the color of the lace to my skin. You don't have to use much powder to do this because the lace blends very easily with many different skin tones. But if you happen to be a lot lighter or darker than the Mrs. Rutter's lace, then I suggest that you do this step. As you can see, ladies, this closure is gorgeous. I barely used any powder, and as you can see, I didn't do anything else because the closure already looks extremely natural. This closure is so perfect. So now I'm applying a little bit of edge control to the edges of my hairline. Technically, I do not have leave out. My baby hairs on the very edges of my hairline are literally so short that they won't stay in the braids. So if that's the same for you, just use a little bit of edge control to slick it down. So you don't have to bring the edge control all the way down your hairline if you're going to be wearing it down, but if you want to anyway, you can go ahead and do so. So as you can see, with the tiniest bit of hair out, it even makes the closure and the whole style just look literally so amazing. Do you ladies see this? This is unreal how great this closure looks. And remember, this is all you have to do for it to look so good. Literally, it's already amazing. Now check this out, no lift at all. Now that our installation is done, I want you to adore how beautiful your hair is looking. And as you can see, by dyeing it a jet black color, it makes it look so rich and vibrant for this look. The hair, as I've said, comes in a natural brown color, and that's because the Mrs. Rutter's hair is actually 100% natural virgin Indian hair, meaning it has never been colored before. Now it's time to add some curls in our hair, and I have 2 sections left in the front to show you how easy it is to do this. Make sure you set your curlers to 350 degrees. Starting on the right side of our head, make sure that you're dividing your section in half. Now use a clip to keep that section away while you work on the next section. Comb through to smooth out your hair. When you're curling your hair, make sure you're curling in a direction going away from your face. And also, as you're curling, go ahead and use 2 hands if you need to, especially when you're working with a Marcel curling iron. You want to make sure that you're maintaining control throughout the entire process. So make sure that the curlers are resting near the roots so that it's very warm and consistent from the scalp to the ends. And then slowly release the curl into your hand and use a duck bill clip to hold it in place as it cools. So now you're going to do the same thing to your last section that's on the right side of your head. Because you're so close to your face, make sure to be very careful and take your time. And also hold the curlers out away from your face so you can see very easily exactly what you're doing. Now slowly release it into your hand and then use a duck bill clip to hold that curl in place. Now we're working on the left side of our head. Do the same thing by dividing it in half and using a clip to keep the hair section out of the way while you work on the section that you see here. Comb through to make sure your hair is very smooth for consistent looks with your curls. Now for the left side of our head, our curls are actually being curled toward our face for this really cool look that we're going to achieve with our hair. At this point, the only thing I did to the hair was I actually applied heat protectant. So if you saw earlier in the tutorial, we used liquid water-based heat protectant to actually mold down the closure. And I also additionally added an oil-based heat protectant down the length of the hair. Now here we are on our last section on the left side, and I'm almost finished curling my hair. Make sure you're careful since you're so close to your face, and make sure you're also curling toward your face but out in front of you so that you can see exactly where the curlers are and see exactly that you're able to curl all the way to the ends. Now our curls are all done. We are all pinned up and ready for this reveal. I'm just spinning around to show you how your hair should look at this point. I got 2 curls left on my left side and 2 on my right side. And I'm going to show you how you actually want to style your hair. But first, let's adore how sultry and gorgeous this hair is fresh off the pins. Now using your comb, go ahead and smooth out your first curl all the way to the ends. Now wrap the curl around your hand, and as you're smoothing it, put it into position exactly where you want it. Using your favorite hairspray, you're going to spray along the length of your curl and then move on to the next one. Now this is the last curl on the left side that we're going to do. And one tip I want you to keep in mind is to never rush through combing or handling your curls, because you will take away a lot of its curl if you do that. So then just spray that into position. Now you see this side? That's what we're going to do to this side. And in order to do that, grab two neighboring curls and comb them together. So instead of smaller curls, we're creating bigger, juicier curls that are going to be turned into one. So now after combing and smoothing it all the way down and fixing it exactly how you want it to be, you're going to spray a little bit of spray on it. Now we're working on our very last curl, and you're going to do the same thing. So now that we're done, ladies, as you can see, curling your hair is so easy. This is such a cute way to spice up your lace closure install. And voila, our install is complete. I showed you how to color, how to braid, how to sew down your hair and slay this from start to finish. So if you enjoyed, of course, leave some comments down below. And if you want hair like this, purchase your hair from MissRutters.com.